It's front page of The Sun.
Yes, so this is, one of those quite unbelievable stories, really. Tube driver on Saturday was filmed leading a chant of Free, Free Palestine on a packed Central Line train, did it 8 times, and now, of course, there's an investigation into who their identity is. Deeply unprofessional and, deeply worrying for, Jewish communities at a time when we've seen a huge spike in anti-Semitic hate crime.
Is it anti-Semitic to chant Free Palestine? It's
deeply unprofessional for a start. They shouldn't be doing this, a very political, contentious role. And I think that, having an anti-Israel chant at a time like this is unhelpful to say the least.
So you're interpreting pro-Palestine as being
I think in a capacity, I think even you can put that aside, I think that, to do this in this capacity on TfL network, funded by taxpayers, is wrong and it shouldn't have been encouraged in any way.
One of the things that we try and do, Nick and I, Dave, who works on the show, is Jewish, and has been very helpful to us over the last couple of weeks because it is, listen, it's a hotbed of confusion. Just want to make this point. Yes, I'm completely with you. I think it's massively, massively unprofessional. I think that's one issue. Yeah. Of course, people are allowed to demonstrate and show free speech in this country. Jihad, the word means holy war. It doesn't mean free Palestine. I'm going to keep saying that all morning. It means holy war. And when you look at ISIS and you look at Al-Qaeda, that is why people are wound up about this quite rightly. Now, he didn't say that on the tube. He's being unprofessional and saying free Palestine. At the march, which is what Braverman's talking about to Rowley later, people are shouting jihad. That's a holy war. That is a difference, and I wanted to make that point because we were talking about this an hour ago, right?
Yeah, where do you stand, Ava, on the Free Palestine being chanted on, but being spoken about on the tube tannoy?
I mean, in context, so the tube driver was responding to a large number of people who were going to the pro-Palestine march and they were getting on the tube, and I think he allegedly said something like, I wasn't able to get the day off, but I would like to have gone on the march with you, and then he led a chant. He didn't actually say Palestine, he said free, free, and then the rest of the tube were responding with Palestine.
He did 8 times, so I think it was pretty obvious.
But I'm just laying out the exact facts, because then when we go in to talk about Suella Braverman and we're talking about these shouts of jihad which were happening on the streets of London at this march, they didn't actually happen at the pro-Palestine march. This was all these shouts of jihad and also these alleged. Well, hang on, I'm about to tell you. Then there's also these alleged signs which said were very pro-Hamas. Now, this was organised by a separate group. This was organised by an Islamist fundamentalist group.
Well, they should be arrested and taken off the streets.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is when we're going to talk about it, it's good to talk about it in context, and I think it's fair to give it the nuance that the whole
Do you agree, though,
deserves.
do you agree that whether they were associated with the Free Palestine March, whether they were on the tube, or whether they were a splintered group, you surely, in terms of anti-Semitism, and friends of mine who are too scared, genuinely don't laugh at me, to go out with their kids, you would understand that anybody shouting jihad or sticking up, they have to be dealt with.
I would never, ever contest that.
Absolutely.
I would not contest that at all. I think this is a fringe group that was the Met have even acknowledged, it's a separate group that was alongside the original march. And it's just sad that there are people who went to march on Saturday who were genuinely just talking about a two-state solution. They're talking about their concerns
but how many times,
and then you've got these people on the side of it who are rotten and ruin it for the rest of them. And it's a shame.
We had an amazing guest on last week, Elliot Serene, who said this is not a football match. It is not one team against another.
No,
there is a lot of nuance and detail to this, and we need to be very, very careful to not immediately take one side or presume something that has happened that actually hasn't happened.
But the problem is, in this country nowadays, and I think, James, you might agree, I don't know, all of these causes which, people go for, they get hijacked, wrong word, but I can't think of another, by extremists. They're not fundamentalists, they're extremists. If I was a Jewish person today and I saw anybody on the streets of Great Britain shouting jihad, which I will repeat is a holy war, it's not Free Palestine, I would absolutely want them dragged off the street, locked up, because I would know what had happened, and we've spoken to people in Israel. That's the reality.
Well, the group in question who organised this, element of it have been banned in a number of other countries as well. I think they're banned in all but 3 Arab nations and Germany. And I think that, reading the Telegraph today, Tony Blair and David Cameron both tried to get it prescribed. So the question is, why has this been allowed to go on? So I think almost the language around, jihad, etc., apparently the CPS have looked into this and said that it wasn't grounds for prosecution here.
Why?
But I do think leaving that aside, why did it go ahead in the first place, I should say, given all of this?
So the law is to blame,
Neil
not the
Busby
coppers.
was talking about this yesterday, so the former head of counter-terrorism police. It's like it's a hole in the law that has been there for too long, apparently.
We
So
can
that's
move
what
it to the
meeting will be.
Express, Nick. Front page of the Express over. A Braverman to demand answers on the Met from Sir Mark Rowley. God, he does get it. He's useless, isn't he? Did not arrest protesters chanting jihad. You're saying it's because the law's got a hold in. He said, Rowley, I can't. It's not on the legislature.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not saying that. The law is saying there isn't actually a way of prosecuting someone for that at this time. But, I mean, there was definitely a Hamas sign as well that was going around, a pro-Hamas sign that the Met had tweeted out last night, and now they're looking for the person who was holding that up at the march. I mean, I don't... It's just sad. I mean, isn't it awful? You're in the capital city of the UK and you've now got Jewish people who are too frightened to leave their homes because of bad faith actors like this. The rest of the march, peaceful, fine.
Yeah.
You are allowed to do that in this
country.
country.
Lots of Jewish people at the march as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you've got those select few who really do want to make Jewish people frightened, and I don't understand that.
I was going to ask you, because I don't know if you heard, you were at a Jewish wedding yesterday.
Yep. Orthodox Jewish wedding.
What's the feeling amongst the Jewish community about this?
Terrified. I mean, I spoke to the rabbi who conducted the ceremony yesterday. We had a really good conversation. He just said the rise in anti-Semitism, you know, that there is obviously, you know, you don't need me to tell you that, but there's a huge sense of fear from within his community. And he said talking to people about it is really difficult. The presumption that is made about Jewish people, particularly him, because he's visibly, you know, a Jewish man, and where he stands politically as a result of being Jewish. But it's about that separation, isn't it, between religion and everything else that's going on. Nobody should be presumed to be something that they're not because they're Jewish or because they're Muslim. And there are some Muslim people who would say, actually, that, you know, the word jihad, you know, very, very basic, looking it up in the dictionary, literally means to strive to do one's utmost within Islam. So we can get into semantics and say, this is what this means, this is what that means. But ultimately,
war, though, doesn't it?
But it depends on who's...
Well, the reason people get wound up about it is because ISIS and Al-Qaeda have shouted jihad and it's meant holy war. That's the whole point.
Yes, but then we can't...
And so the Free Palestine people, and don't get me wrong, we've sat here for 2 weeks, and I think every single person who's been here the first day or couple of days rightly responding to those heinous attacks and then saying, this is a humanitarian disaster. Nobody wants to see this. But I thought that guy was quite interesting just then when he said, this isn't revenge. This is getting rid of Hamas once and for all to ensure that this happens never again. That's the reality. But listen, this is do you think Braverman can make it? Do you think, I mean, why don't the government bring in a law then rather than have a go at the police?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've seen in different areas, seen it as well with the National Security Act being passed in terms of updating our treason, you know, our outdated laws and this kind of stuff. But I think from the look of it, you know, obviously we're going to see how it plays out throughout the rest of the week, but, you know, the police pointed at the politicians pointed at the police. There's probably a bit of fault on both sides here. What I would only say is the point about consistent services from both, you know, TfL in terms of what was said about the Free Palestine chant and also about the consistent policing, because there's also a report today in the Telegraph talking about how a pro-Israel march was told to reschedule and move out the way because of a potential clash with the Palestinian one. So I just think the kind of consistent policing is the least we can expect when we deal with very sensitive issues around community tensions.
What does this mean for, or potentially mean for, free speech in the UK as well, if a new law were to be brought in? Because as far as I was aware, I thought that inciting violence with speech was tantamount to hate speech, which is covered in law.
Is there not a law against inciting violence? Are you telling me in this country in 2023 there isn't a law against inciting violence? I mean, I hear about these hate crimes if you upset somebody by saying they've got big feet. Are you telling me that if you incite by shouting jihad, which means a holy war, you can't be arrested?
This is the question we get down to the legal.
Well, the law's a
semantics.
complete arse then, isn't it? Why is there not that?
Well, I think there's some subjectivity, isn't it, about what the intent or why that was used in the first place. But look, you know,
why do we in this country miss out on things that are obvious?
well, I was going to say, but you know, we've spent how many years now? You know, I mean, Suella Braverman herself has denigrated those hate speech laws. You know, I mean, how often have we read about Keir Starmer in the news, who was apparently trying to arrest us all for speaking, and now suddenly we're here on a Monday morning going, where on earth is the law? Where on earth is the checks and balances on this?